And welcome back to the Mixed Media Podcast. We're here for another Mixed Media Monday. This is after a little break last week, the 4th of July weekend. I hope everyone had a great 4th of July. We're back this week for another set of hopefully pretty awesome episodes. Now, Nathan's not with us right now because he's having some internet issues, but hopefully he'll be able to pop in, as his topic, which is on the screen right now, is branding for video games, which I think could be rather interesting. But without further ado, well, first let me explain who we are. So Mixed Media is a weekly live stream podcast. We're streaming every Monday, most Mondays, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check us out in the chat. You can chat with us as we record our little podcast, and we throw the podcast out for you all to hear pretty much on all streaming or on all podcasting platforms. And what we talk about is anything art-related, news, reviews, interviews. Wow, that all rhymes. You name it. Views on philosophy. Okay, I'm trying too hard, but yeah, pretty much you name it, we talk about it with regards to our particular art forms, especially. So, without further ado, we'll introduce ourselves. So, my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer. And
Nathan is usually our gaming person, so hopefully he'll be back whenever he comes back. Let's see, a few housekeeping things. Shout out to 909 Crime and to Rob Sharma for supporting us on mixedmedia.locals.com, which is our support page. Here, I'll throw up a quick picture over here of all the things that you can get if you support us on there. We're always looking to expand the podcast. So if you want to help us out, you can go over there. You get access to this live whiteboard on the right of the screen here. So how's your week been? What's been up?
It's okay. Not much. I've been kind of busy with some of my work for Duolingo. I don't know. Nothing too interesting.
Cool. For me, it's been a crazy busy past few weeks. Crazy start to the month. Let's see, what's been going on? Oh yeah, so I ended up finally doing that guest podcasting episode where I guested on Secrets of Movie and TV, which the episode I don't think is out yet as far as I can tell. So if you want to go subscribe to their podcast, Secrets of Movies and TV, it's by StarQuest, and if you go look that up, you'll be able to find it very easily. And there you can subscribe and get my takes on Batman. We ended up talking almost exclusively about the recent Batman movie. So I'll definitely have to do a Batman episode on this podcast to get my thoughts out on Batman as a whole. But it was still very fun, so I was really appreciative to be on their show. It was awesome. Let's see, what else has been going on? I'm on a new graphics card now. So, wow. As I say that, I noticed that our little background streamer thing is kind of buzzed. I'll fix that in a second, if I can. But I'm on a new graphics card right now. I've got the RTX 3080 12GB version. It is a unicorn of a graphics card that I got for $769, which for the purposes of graphics card these days, that is dirt cheap. The graphics card shortage let up for it feels like it only let up for about a week or two, and I nabbed it while supply issues weren't a thing anymore, and I don't think you can even get this card anymore, so I'm feeling very good about that, and that will segue very nicely into my topic that'll be happening later. That's pretty much it on my end of things, pretty much. Any music news, anything like that?
The only thing I noticed was for today, Monty Norman died. Kind of an relatively unknown figure. Mostly just in work on TV series and British TV series in the 50s and 60s. But his biggest claim to fame is writing the James Bond theme for Dr. No, although it was then arranged by John Barry, and he won a lawsuit in I think 2001 and 2002 after I think some article in the Sunday Times, British newspaper, had said that he had credited the composition to John Barry, and he won 30,000 euros at the time, 30,000 euro libel damages. But that's kind of what he's known / unknown for. So yeah, died today at the age of 94.
The young, ripe age of 94. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, for me, the only thing I really remember happening this last week was the big headlines in the film world was Johnny Depp was offered like 3 film roles after the trial. I don't remember the value of all of them. I remember they were quite high, which was quite predictable after the trial. After he won the suit, that he would be back on the market because he is quite the single human market. So he'll be back to work acting in Hollywood. Probably never again with Disney is my prediction. But besides that, that whole situation is sort of back to normal. Let me think if I can.
Nathan hopped in.
Oh, okay, awesome. Nathan is in now. Let me unmute him and whatever you call it. Make him visible again. Okay. All right, Nathan, we should be able to hear and see you.
Hello.
So, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about your week and stuff?
Sure. I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer. My week has been interesting. As you can see, I've been having technical difficulties for the past week with just random things. I'm not really sure what's happening at the moment, but yeah, what just happened there is my Wi-Fi was out, right? That happened right after I found out my camera doesn't work with my desktop, so that was cool. And that was also right after I found out Skype also does not work correctly, seemingly, on my desktop. Well, it half works. So yeah, it's interesting. But this past week, not really that much, I guess. Other than that, it's been particularly interesting going on.
And we've got Liam in the chat. Ayo. How's it going, Liam? Yeah, cool. Is there any sort of news that you've noticed in the gaming world? Put you on the spot.
Nothing I can think of at the moment. Yeah, I can't think of anything at the moment.
Cool. Awesome. Well, so we had quite the start. We were like 5 minutes late in having all these sorts of issues, but so we didn't really decide who was going first. But Nathan, did you actually want to go first? I kind of assumed it, but
well, I kind of lost all my notes because I'm not on the same computer.
Oh, okay. So is that
I don't think it would be wise. I'm actually, as we currently speak, I am looking up the information that I had before.
Okay, well, so I'll just outro this segment real quick. So this was Mixed Media News, our little tiny segment where we talk about our weeks, what's been going on in our different little worlds. And if you're wondering why we're talking as if we're going to do another segment right now, it's because we are. This is a live podcast. It happens every week at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I think I said that at the front. And the cool thing about that is that we record our entire week's worth of casts up front, online, in the raw, and you can interact with us and be sort of part of the podcast. It's really fun when that happens, when we have a lot of people contributing, their perspectives as we're talking. So if you want to check that out, if you're listening to this in post, then you've got to visit the links in the description of the podcast that you're listening to right now. And you'll find our YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch, where you can go ahead and follow us and get notifications for when we're streaming. Also join the Discord, which is also in the description. Yeah, anything else I missed there?
I don't think so.
Cool. So without further ado, I will transition to my section. All right, here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. We've been here for a few minutes, a minute or so, talking about news and all the other sorts of things in our respective worlds. Oh yeah, the thing. We've got to introduce ourselves every episode again. I remember to do that. So, my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella, and you can visit my website at ariella.co.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
Nathan Nestor, 3D modeler and game developer. I have to pick up a call. I'll be right back.
Smooth. Okay. Cool. So this is my segment for this week, and my original segment was about Vince Gilligan and Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. I was going to go into the genius writing of those things, and then I didn't realize that topic was for this week, so I didn't properly prepare for it, and I can't do that kind of injustice to Vince Gilligan's genius show running, and those shows just need a huge amount of care and love to break them down properly. So instead, I was thinking, what's going on in the world? I was like, oh yeah, economics. I haven't done that in a long time. So we'll head back in that direction. And if you don't know, the reason I occasionally cover this on the show is because I feel as though artists tend to not have a good grasp on the sort of personal finance level of things. And I think for me, and I think now that I'm helping people in the internship at my company and stuff like that, yeah, I think it is probably, besides being a good artist, it's probably the number one skill you could possibly have, is to understand personal finance, understand how to run a business. And when I say business, I don't mean necessarily like I'm doing, where I'm, trying to build something that perpetuates and grows and all that kind of stuff, but to think of yourself as an artist as a single cell unit of business as well, right? Like, think of yourself, your skills, as marketable, and all the surrounding things that come with that, which intersects with your personal finances quite heavily. So I would say that a good understanding of personal finances is a extremely high predictor of success, because I can tell you right now, I would be back, I don't know, I can't even imagine what my life would look like right now if I did not prepare properly, did not understand things properly. I probably would have failed by now, actually. I don't see how that wouldn't have been the case. I would have become insolvent rather quickly, especially with a lot of the mistakes I've made. Being financially free allows you to make more mistakes, people. So that's what we're going to kind of harp on a little bit informally today. I don't have as much specificity as I had before in the other two episodes, but I want to get at a few principles here. Now, I'm going to be a lot more candid than I have in the past, because I think before I felt like I was like, I don't know, like dipping my toes and like being like, okay, here's the number one thing that you need to understand about making financial decisions. Financial decisions don't care about your feelings. They just don't. And this is probably a more difficult thing than people realize. So if you're a little bit more, how should I put it? If you get a little bit more attached to your habits, you're a little bit more attached to your passions, your day-to-day emotions, this is rather difficult. And it's money and its relationship to those things is a lot more tied than I think people give it credit for. So you have to sort of re-examine your entire life in a completely new lens and think of yourself as a part of your identity in a completely different way. If you want to start getting at this problem in an accurate, not risk-free, but less risky way going forward. That being said, speaking of risk, this is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. This is zero advice at all. That is it. If you want to do, if I say something that I'm doing and you copy me and something happens to you, that is on you. And in fact, I will tell you something right now. I gave an asset mixture in the last time I talked about the state of the economy. It was many, many, many months ago that I did that. And I didn't update in between. But I've made a ton of financial moves since then. But if you're still in that asset mixture, you're dying right now, which I could have told you way back when I switched my strategy. So, yeah, that's to say that, you have to know what you're doing. It's not just copying anyone. You have to know what you're doing. And there's no cheat code out there that's going to replace it, particularly because everyone's personal finances and their personal decision-making sort of formula has to, by necessity, be completely different. What do I mean by that? I mean that your starting conditions, your initial conditions, are all going to be completely different. So, and I mean everything. So you need to account for your initial conditions in terms of your age, right? When you start to think of these things, your, your medical conditions even. Like I said, everything integrates. You need to think of your current assets, your current savings. You need to think about what sorts of certifications do you have? Like, what is all of the initial conditions? That is so different from person to person that no one can ever give you a completely blanket solution to anything. And this is why personal finance coaches exist, although in my personal opinion, I don't think most of the time those people are worth the enormous amount of money that you pay them. They kind of absorb all of the money that you make following their advice, which it's good business. So yeah, that's all to say. It's all about the principles, and it's much less about the specific copying of anyone. I'll give you an example. There's a bunch of YouTubers out there right now who are extremely wealthy. They're millionaires. They've got asset portfolios that are like, $50 million, and they're like 30 years old, right? And everyone looks to them as to be the, people to emulate, which I understand that, and they're not bad people per se. Well, it probably depends on the person, but you can find good people who are, have large asset portfolios, doing well for themselves, but you cannot just copy them. If they're not teaching you the principles, then trying to copy them will get you slaughtered. For example, right now, tons of people have been absolutely selling pretty much everything just to be entirely in cash and to load up on real estate at the crash. This strategy works really, really, really well if you have such diversified and large amounts of assets that your personal well-being is not even a question. Like, if you're so wealthy that your personal well-being is literally not questionable, like if you just took all of your cash assets and just lived on them for the next 10 years, if that's how long things are depressed for, and then you'll be good, then of course your decision-making is going to look entirely different from the average person. So you have to remember that. That being said, I'm on the completely opposite spectrum of the wealth totem pole. So maybe I'll relate to you guys a little bit.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if it's just for me, but you're clipping a little bit.
Oh, am I clipping? That is... Oh, yeah, my mic is turned up quite a bit. How long has that been happening?
It's been a long time. I don't know why I didn't say anything earlier.
Whoops. I don't have talk back on right now, so I can't hear myself. So that really is unfortunate. Rip everyone. Sorry. Okay, I should have been looking at the meter. Anyway, now that I've been corrected, I don't sound like a saw.
And now
Also first
Nathan
names.
has disappeared.
Oh no!
Oh,
Of course.
hello.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Oh, I
Hello?
don't know actually if you're back or not.
Hello. Testing.
I can
hear
hear
you.
you, but
Yeah.
you're frozen visually.
Oh, so now the thing is, right? I still don't have Wi-Fi, so I'm running off a hotspot right now. So also
So your
my
video
phone,
will-
I was thinking about this before. I was thinking about like my phone is getting so hot right now. I was like, at some point it might start throttling itself, and then it might just get bad. Like the Wi-Fi just might get bad, and it might be that time. So
Yeah. Okay. All right. What was I saying here? Oh, yes. So, again, not about emulation, it's about the principles. So, what I recommend you do, if you're not as well off, is go revisit those episodes that I did before. I think if you type in inflation and recession and mixed media, you'll find them somehow, or something like that. Highly predictive videos, if I will say myself. So you want to listen to those things, and then hopefully, I think I put in one of the descriptions of one of those videos some resources, or maybe in the pinned comment on one of them, some resources where you can go look into those things further, the financial principles further. Now, the game has changed entirely in the past few months. I said in the last time I talked about this stuff, I told you, and I was absolutely correct, and I will say it again and again and again, that inflation was going to stay high for a very long amount of time. And I win on that prediction, which is awesome, because hopefully you can go back and understand why I said it, because I explained it before, so I won't re-explain it now. But now that we're here, we have similar sorts of, I guess, promises being made without the market being fooled. So, you have basically real estate. Well, real estate's a different thing. I shouldn't mention that in the same sort of category. The consumer, the average consumer, and the Wall Street broker basically have, trust in everything being okay now is basically rock bottom. Everything is not okay. So we finally caught up with the reality that everything is not okay. That being said, the financial situation is completely different as well. And I should connect this to personal finance. I'm realizing that I didn't connect, because we're about to talk about macro finance, and I didn't connect the two. So let me connect them real quick. The macro financial situation must dictate the way that you treat yourself as an artist, because you are extremely expendable. You are a volatile asset. I'm sorry to say it. I am one too, so I feel it. But the sooner you grapple with that reality and deal with it and internalize it, the sooner you can be well insulated from it by taking action sooner rather than later. And it's not too late to do that. So understanding the macro sort of economic scenario will help you to decide whether or not you're going to take risks now, what types of risks you're going to take now, how to treat your client base, a whole bunch of decisions that you're going to make as an artist. If you're working for a company as an artist, then you might have certain ideals that you might have to meet in a crappy market versus a good one. And the same thing if you're self-employed, and the same thing if you have a business, right? So we want to understand the macroeconomic situation so that we understand what regime we're in, so we can insulate ourselves the best. In every regime, almost every regime, I should say, there are some regimes I can think of which include the collapse of the country, where there would be nothing good to do, right? So but in almost every regime there are good things to do. So the only time where you have nothing good to do for yourself. As if your country is collapsing, at which point you have bigger things to worry about. So, so that's a little bit different. So in every other scenario, there's something that we can do. Before, when we're talking about high inflation coming sooner and harder and longer than expected, I was saying buying assets for your personal finance might be a very good idea. And buying stuff may be a very good idea because stuff was going to get more expensive. And it definitely did get a lot more expensive. So, that was the big mantra. Because the macroeconomic regime was inflationary and the market was behaving extremely irrationally. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because they say, oh, the amalgam of hedge fund, people and bond brokers and fintech people and, analysts and all these people can't possibly collectively be wrong. Well, here we are. So yes, they can. Not just wrong, irrational, literally irrational. So that's what was going on there. So there was a certain response to the market being disconnected from inflation that would be ideal for you to take up if you were in a certain situation where you did not have things. If you did not own things, you needed to start owning things now that were essential. That's the thing I said, is if you need things to do your work, I need this camera, I need the camera that's behind me as well, I need the computer underneath my desk, probably more than anything else. I need all this stuff in order to continue my profession, because we don't want to end up, I think, besides you and your family starving, probably the worst thing you could do to yourself is lose your profession as an artist, right? That's kind of a little bit of a different kind of death. So we're trying to cling on here as much as we possibly can. So if we're going to do that, and you had to take care of your essentials then in order to not get screwed over potentially later. Now, a lot of people were saying at that time that the thing is the Fed will come in, the money printer will go in reverse, it'll be a money sucker, and money will be sucked into the vortex of the ledger of the Fed, and we'll enter a recession and prices will go down. This is ridiculous. This is rich people speak. The reason this is rich people speak is because their assets going down temporarily in a 15-year period doesn't affect them. It doesn't matter that the market crashes. It doesn't matter that things went up, then down severely, because they just look at the down as the opportunity to buy. And that's how we're going to start looking at it too. But we have extra considerations because we don't have our life completely solved for with large sums of cash like rich people do. So there's certain things that we have to take care of. One of them being the fact that as assets come down, which allows you to buy them cheaper, like houses and stocks and anything else, pretty much any hard asset besides metals maybe, die in a recession. When that happens, it's a buying opportunity for wealthy people. For us, it is not that simple. And I'm tired of hearing people say it as if it's that simple. Because what happens to you is you become strapped for cash flow, income, and reserves in a bad economy. And if you don't remember 2008 sort of style recession, this is not that at all, but I'm just, if you're younger and you remember any sort of economic downturn, you probably remember that one, the 2008 sort of ordeal. Then you'll remember that there was a supreme lack of work, or supreme is maybe exaggerating. I guess it's all relative. But there was a large lack of work for the United States, at least. And there was a increase in cost compared to the amount of wages that people were earning. So wages were stagnant, and things in comparison became more expensive. There were certain items like gas and other things that became larger portions of people's weekly paycheck. And that became a much bigger deal. Now, that means that when your cash flows die, you cannot buy new assets. If you don't have cash on hand, how, and you're not making more money in the future, how are you going to buy real estate when things are down? You're not. You can't. In fact, what's more likely to happen to you, if you're at the bottom of the totem pole like I am, is if you have any assets right now, if you just happen to have anything right now and you didn't sell it, and you let everything die in the stock market, in the real estate market, you let everything die, what was much more likely to happen to you is you're going to sell at the bottom, because you are in a high likelihood scenario where you're actually going to need the value of that asset to sustain yourself. That's bad. You don't want to do that. That's literally worst case scenario, is buying high and selling low while also losing everything. Like that's really bad. So we want to avoid that reality as much as we possibly can. And we want to prepare, hopefully, it's not terribly too late, to buy the low like we're a rich person, but that's going to take freaking work. It's going to take a lot of work. So you're going to have to start rearranging the way that you do and think about things. Now, one thing that's important about understanding macroeconomic situations is understanding what actually is, right? So frankly speaking, and it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn over and over again, but I think it's a lot easier to do than people think it is. And if you develop an intuition, of course, you might be better at it than other people. But I like to view predicting macroeconomic situations as a game of catching the signal, basically. There's a bunch of noise, there's a bunch of signal. You want to decrease the noise and amplify the signal. That also doesn't care about your feelings. So what you want to be the signal is not the signal. You wanting it to be the case that the Fed can somehow thread the needle and, everything will be okay and, assets will keep going up. I see a bunch of arguments as to why real estate will keep going up forever. I think they're absolutely ridiculous arguments, because that's the exact point of the Fed trying to kill. They're literally trying to kill these markets. I don't see why they won't stop until the asset prices come down. That's literally the point, because that is causing inflation. So, the money sucker is going to suck until the assets come down. That's like literally the point. So, this is silly thinking. So you got to think in terms of signal versus noise. Now, I'm not going to go into my way of doing that right now. And, by all means, if you want to ask me, DM me or talk to me on the Discord or whatever, so be it. And that's good. I will happily have those conversations with you. However, I think the principle of looking at information from everywhere, from like the people that you disrespect and the people you respect, and looking at them and objectively asking yourself, who is more predictive? Who has the better grasp of the signal? And what are they looking at? Can I find a hard data source? Can I find a table to look at? Can I find a study to look at? Can I find, something to grasp the core signal of what's real? There's what's real, and there's what people say about what's real. And you want to get closer to the real, essentially. The closer you get to that, the more you'll see how ridiculous it is that other people can't do that. I'm not talking about people, an average person. I'm talking about professionals can't do that. It's really bizarre. But that's a rant for another day. There are a lot of thoughts on that. But, so that's a general principle that we want to carry forward, is being extremely objective with how we view how things are progressing. So, one thing I'll say right now, there are a bunch of fads in terms of like what people are saying, how things are going to go. I don't know why people still listen to this guy down here below on the screen. I think he's a funny dude. I think his job is a cheerleader at the best. He's a cheerleader for the economy, and he wants his positive words to yield positive impact on the economy, which was working basically up until recently. So, yeah, that's why I said invest, because the money printer was on. Now that we're in a different regime where trust is lost, now you've got to do different things. Now, here's a nuance for you to pick up and think about and mull over in your head. Inflation is the general, or I guess there's many ways to describe inflation, but generally we're talking about assets and other things all increasing in price in US dollars. One thing that I said before, was things are still going to go up because the printer was on, particularly the stock market, which is where the Fed has its most influence. Now, a lot of people, it's kind of trendy to say, well, the Fed is lying, so inflation is going to go on forever. Now, there's wisdom in this because I think inflation may, and this I don't have a strong signal on, so we'll see what happens, as we collect information. But the inflation situation may last for the next 5 years, or it may not last for the next 2 years, right? It's clear to me that it's rather long term. So it's sort of like 70s style-esque, although the situation is completely different from then as well. If you want to look that up, look up 70s inflation. You can learn a little bit of history there. That's very interesting. Okay, I agree. Inflation is going up. But what you're not seeing, if you're saying that means I need to keep buying things, is that the problem is that the growth in the economy is dying. So before you had what seemingly looked like or what was being described by the Fed and other people as a rather healthy economy, inflation is transitory, all this garbage. That gave everything the impression of growth, which means you could buy into the growth because that meant everyone else was buying into the growth. Now we've got not growth. We've got just price increase with no growth behind it, and not even the semblance of growth, which means that the economic situation comes down. People lose faith. They start not taking risks with their businesses and all this kind of stuff. They stop taking on debt and all this kinds of stuff. So right now, the ironic thing is, in the next, for the next however long, not financial advice, the best performing asset category, if you can do this properly, is going to be cash. Bizarre thing to say, but this is why we want to think in nuance real quick and understand why I say this right now, where I was saying the exact opposite before. The reason cash will be the best performing asset is if you can hold it and buy at the bottom, you have increased your purchasing power by proxy. So if you can buy real estate at a crash, if you can hold on to that cash, it's inflating. It might be inflating at 8%, 10%, whatever it is. That is nothing compared to a 50% dip in the market, which we're right now at 30% or something near there right now. So if we just jumped back to normal right after this, you would gain 30%. If we're talking about real estate, we're looking right now at a crash that might be something like, oh, it's Toby, LOL, says, yo, sup? We might be looking at something 50%, maybe even more. Insane stuff. And things will be so cheap that you will actually have the opportunity to buy them if you can hold the cash. How do you hold the cash? How do you make sure that you don't die? Because what happens to everyone else is they get wrecked by the economy and they can't buy at the bottom, or else everyone would do that, right? And then there wouldn't be a bottom. Everything would be fine. They can't do it. That's why we end up going down. You want to be the one who can. You want to be like the rich people who can do it at the bottom. How do you do that? You stabilize your cash flow immediately. When I say immediately, I mean like negative 2 days ago, or negative 2 days ahead, whatever, 2 days ago. You had started to plan how you're going to preserve your cash flow if you have a job and the job is not causing you psychological distress. Because that's a different story. If you don't feel like you can continue, then you need to figure out the switch now, like yesterday. Because we're still in an employee's market right now. That will not last for very long. You still have the power of negotiation right now. So go on the market now and switch your job. If you're going to strike it out alone, you need to have all your ducks in a row. If you're going to do it right now, this is like probably the worst time you could possibly do it. But if you were going to do it right now, you could possibly do it. Person in the chat says Lalo Salamanca died. Okay, is someone just dropping a spoiler for Better Call Saul in the chat? That's not cool. I'm not even talking about Better Call Saul. Okay. Yeah. So, what you want to do is you want to be able. Oh, sweet! We've got a ton of people on Twitch just pooling in at random. I don't know if you guys are just randomly coming in here because of the algorithm, or you guys are randomly coming in here to just drop spoilers. I don't know, but welcome to the show. We're not even talking about these things anyway, so cool. Anyway, so if you want to be that person, you have to take care of your cash flow immediately. Now, some of that might look like finding passive income. Like, if you don't have any passive income, finding it immediately. I don't have very much passive income. I mean, yeah, I pretty much don't have very much passive income right now. And I'm in a very weird position right now where I don't have housing past September where I am right now, even though I have a decent situation. I won't get into it. That's a story for another day. But I'm in a weird situation where I have to move. So, again, nuance. I just told you assets will perform poorly against cash. However, if you need a place to live, which literally everyone does, what you will do if you rent, you might starve yourself of cash. Even though house prices are high right now, it may behoove you to look into the housing market right now, run your really advanced calculations on your financial situation, see if you can cash flow it, if you can rent, if you get it, buy a cheap duplex, rent out one side, that pays your mortgage in the other. You could cash flow positive, even with the expensive house prices right now. Even though I just told you assets will perform poorly, yeah, your home value is going to perform poo. It's going to be terrible. But you need a place to live, because what happens during recessions? Again, the signal. The signal is, and this is almost invariable in recessions, is that if you rent, you get screwed. If you rent, you get screwed. Why? Because rent tends to decouple from housing prices entirely. This happened in 2008, happened in the 70s, happened pretty much as far as I could see in the graphs, as far as we have data. Rents decouple from the housing prices. They skyrocket during recessions. Happens almost invariably. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm not going to buy a house because the house price is going to decrease 50%, and then I'm going to save my money while I'm renting to then go ahead and buy a house at cheap, you are going to get stuck in a trap, and you're going to get wrecked, right? Potentially. I can't say that for sure because everyone's financial situation is different. If you have a $100,000 job, renting actually may make more sense because now you can cash flow positive, save more money. If you perceive that you can get a place that is more viable for investing in the future by buying a $500,000 home, maybe $500,000 triplex or something like that. If you can do that as someone who's making $100,000 a year, you have to do all your own calculations, in short, is what I'm trying to say, for your own situation, and that's rather complex. What I'll do to end this whole segment out, what I'll do is I'll put in the description of the final version of this, and maybe in the pinned comment if I remember, and you can ask me if I don't do this, is I'm going to put a awesome calculator. It's from a company called VIP Financial. We're not sponsored. We're tiny. Of course, we're not sponsored by them. But VIP, if they want to sponsor us, I like their calculator, so I'll be open to that idea. But VIP Financial has a great personal finance calculator, and I'll put a link to it. Maybe I'll put a link to it in the chat during the next segment. But what you must do immediately is plug all the numbers in to that calculator and understand your financial situation. From there, it's a huge spreadsheet. It'll take you a while. It'll take you, 30 minutes to an hour, maybe more if your financial situation's super complex. 30 minutes may yield you thousands of dollars. It did for me. So, literally, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars. It did for me. So go ahead, go to that sheet, plug in all your information, understand your financial situation. It'll give you your cash flows, your assets, your debts, how the debts behave over time. You'll start to put together the pieces as to how things are functioning. Once you do that, run scenarios in the calculator. Run the renting scenario. Change the numbers in the calculator. Assume that you're renting. See what happens. If your cash flow goes negative, that is probably, well, not probably, that is an avoidable scenario. If it goes positive for buying a home, cash is the highest performing asset. So you want more cash so you can invest at the bottom of the stock market, the real estate market, whatever you can possibly do. For most people of our stature, it's probably going to be the stock market at the bottom. For me, that's kind of my plan right now. I ran the numbers. I ran them 3 times. I've mulled this over for literally a month now, racking my head over what to do because there's no really good thing I can do in my situation. But the best thing I can do right now for me is buying a duplex, hopefully at a slightly depressed rate because prices are coming down slightly, which cash flows me positive, saving that money to then go ahead and purchase stocks at the bottom. That's the simple formula for me right now. So, or near the bottom. We can't get you're never going to get the bottom, but in the bottom 30%, something like that. Bottom 10% of the dip, right? That's where you want to be buying assets. And so there you go. Final words. This winter is going to be horrible. It's going to be absolutely terrible. I said this last winter. Definitely was the case. I said post last winter, a lot of bad things was going to happen. There are certain things that I predicted. I didn't say them explicitly. I should have, but I knew certain things were going to happen. This winter is going to not for the same reasons, for related reasons though. Not for the same reasons. This winter is going to be way worse than the last winter. So post holiday season, expect a very depressing financial outlook and be prepared for that. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that beware of not being able to use banks anymore. Not literally use banks, like, of course you'll be able to go to a bank and use it. But I mean, not be able to use banks for financing anymore, for getting loans and credit cards and things like that. When the financial situation goes south, the banks tighten because they're not willing to take risks on riskier people. To put it lightly, very complicated subject, but they will tighten. As they tighten, they will tighten far more than what their debts are worth to you, which means getting debt will no longer be a thing that you want. That's bad. If you want a mortgage, at the bottom, you have to be in the financial ability to do that. If you have to almost be able to buy it like 70% cash, like you have to be thinking that way because otherwise you're not going to get that mortgage. The banks will be way too tight and the interest rates will be disgustingly large. We're talking like 20% interest rates potentially, right? Like that's insane. You're putting your house on a credit card. That's insane. So, think about all those things and think about them in detail. And when you're tired and you go to bed and you want to cry because it's so complicated, wake up, punch yourself in the face, and do it again. Run the scenarios again, and then cry again, and then do it again. Because that's the only way that you'll save yourself as an artist if you want to keep doing these things. And I don't know that I can save myself, but I can try to give myself the best odds, right? So that's what you should be doing for yourself. End of rant. There you go. Any thoughts on any of that?
Nice.
Cool.
Actually, related to at the very towards the start, you said something about prices going up for things, so buy things now. I actually, for that reason, bought an extra solid state drive, and I will soon be buying an interesting Wi-Fi gadget. It's called a Wi-Fi access point. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but
no.
It's like a magic box that does cool things, essentially. Yeah. So
Sweet. Wi-Fi access point. Liam says, WAP.
Yes, exactly. Actually, yeah. That's usually what people call it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, if you're curious, if you want to know how to catch the signal a little bit easier, let me know, and I might make this a premium thing for supporters on the locals page. Is doing regular updates on financial decisions that I'm making for myself as I make them, or even little, I don't know, 5-minute like weekly debriefs is what happened this week and the crazy stuff that may change the way that you behave, without being financial advice, of course. So, there you go. Now, before we end this segment, I do want to thank our current local supporters, which are 909 Crime, who is not in the chat right now, but hopefully will be later, and Rob Sharma, who are supporting us for $5 a month on Locals. And you go to mixedmedia.locals.com. If we get a large enough community there, I will start posting tons of stuff there. I've already got some stuff recorded that I could be posting there if you want, but I've got to have some critical mass of people who are interested in such premium content. So I've got, if you're interested on the more artsy side of things, I've got a little, little mini lessons, like an hour long, of how to use a color checker if you're color grading Resolve, because my interns want to know, so I ended up just recording the whole session, basically. And, as I go along with my stuff, I'm going to be recording bits and bobs like that. If you want to see stuff like that, you've got to go to mixedmedia.locals.com. There's already perks that are really cool, I think, if you go over there. And that will help us out, and hopefully we can get our locals community to blossom a little bit so that we can have some cool stuff posted there. So yeah, that's my little pitch.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, shall we go to music?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right, welcome to Mixed Media Music, the section of the Mixed Media podcast where I and my co-host will talk about things in the world of music in general. So before we get started, we are Mixed Media Podcast, a weekly podcast. Live streams every Monday at 9:30 p.m. And then each of the little segments are kind of broken up so we can release the content separately throughout the week. All right, and also before we get started, so why don't we all introduce ourselves? So make sure we do that, because we tend to forget to do that. So again, before we get started with Mixed Media Music, my name is Ben Costello. I'll be your host of this segment, so to speak, and I'm a flute player and a media composer.
My name is.
Oh, I don't know what order we go in for when it's like not like
I was going in like vertical order from top to down, but I don't know.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Go ahead.
My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella that you can see at ariella.co.
I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
And Nathan is cropped weirdly, which I will hopefully remedy eventually.
Yeah, so before we get started, this is our Arguing with Reddit segment this week on Mixed Media Music. That is where I pull up one hot take, so to speak, or controversial opinion or question that I find interesting from the internet, normally from Reddit, and my two co-hosts or representatives of them will find some other ones for me to respond to that I haven't seen. So I know the one that I picked for myself. The other ones I'll be responding to live, giving my thoughts on these hot takes or questions without having seen them before. So that's what this segment is all about.
Yeah, speaking of representatives, we'll start with the one chosen by my representative, which is Producer Wife. And here it is. It says, film score music is better than lyrical music. I seriously would rather listen to an hour-long film score by John Williams, Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman, etc. over a 3-minute rap song by anyone. It's the only non-controversial, yeah, music genre. If you haven't, I highly suggest you listen to film scores and/or orchestral music. They are far better than most music producers today. I mean, I feel like Ben would be biased on this one.
Yeah, well, okay, so to the point of the literal, I guess the description, not so, or like the post, not so much the title. I mean, yeah, I prefer listening to film music to rap. It's not really my favorite genre, although there are things you can learn from it, that I probably should learn from it. But no, I don't know what I would call rap lyrical music, because it's kind of the opposite of lyrical, right? It's kind of a rhythmic, and that's pretty much what it has. Lyric to me, I think as most people would understand lyric, lyrical music is not something that has lyrics, like words, spoken words. Lyrical meaning like describing a certain melodic quality to it. So I wouldn't necessarily, I would say that rap is not lyrical music, although it has lyrics and it's very lyric driven. But I think we're kind of debating. I guess I'm just kind of taking issue with the adjective used. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about that. I wouldn't really stick a Hans Zimmer soundtrack on though and listen to it for enjoyment. I can learn things from it, but like, would I listen to it for pure enjoyment? No.
We had to stick in a hot take in there.
Yeah. Well, it's not that controversial, at least for me. If you watch this show for any length of time, definitely things to learn from Zimmer, but not the kind of. It's generally, I mean, okay, with some exceptions from like the '90s, it's generally not terribly interesting from like a musical standpoint outside of the film. Like it's kind of featureless. Like it's cool sounds. It's cool sounds, but yeah, I have to say something. I can't just say I generally agree with that based on my personal preferences. But yeah. Basically that's my agreeing with you. Although the person mentions orchestral music, which is a whole gigantic field, right, beyond just film music. But yeah, that's pretty much my sentiment.
I think it's interesting that we're saying that we haven't discussed like film music that can be lyrical as well, which is my favorite kind, which is like almost non-existent.
Like film music that's lyrical in the sense that like it emphasizes melody.
Wait, or when you find lyrics like lyrical, right? Yeah. And you said, it seems to less refer to like words being in the song and more like melodies, right? Do you mean like vocal melodies specifically?
No.
Oh, no. Just any melody, just melodic. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think what I'm pointing out is that the word lyrical does not mean having lyrics, which is I think what the poster means.
Yes. I think that's what
that's the definition I thought of. I thought lyrics just having having lyrics.
Oh, yeah, lyrical. I mean, it refers to okay. This isn't necessarily just a musical thing, right? You could say this about painting or dance or poetry or whatever, or architecture. You could use the adjective lyrical for all of these things. And the meaning is coming from like a song like quality, right? Singing, human voice, and presumably human, meaning kind of in a European context, but human voice singing a melody. But that does not mean that it literally involves a human singing words, right? If I talk about lyric or lyrical poetry, It means something very particular, and it does not mean that someone's singing it, right? Going back to like ancient Greece, where the term comes, okay, yes. If I were to describe like the lyricism of like and fluidity of some dance moves or something, it doesn't have anything to do with human voice. It same as like kind of a song like flowing quality to it. So that's what the word lyrical means to me.
Yeah. I think you guys are speaking different languages.
Yeah, I was my impression of what the original poster there meant, not literally lyrical.
Yeah. Okay, so this one's from you, Ben. So take it away with the explanation.
All right, I'm gonna cut out some brief bits of it because not PG rated. And this is not from my usual. I normally pull this stuff from our classical music or our composer. This is from our unpopular opinion. Person says with no comments on it either. Adding music to action scenes degrades them, with exceptions. And they're going to talk a little bit. I'm not going to read it verbatim. They're going to talk a little bit about examples from video games and from films. And I thought this was very interesting. One person says, whenever I play an action game, I turn off the music because it feels like it takes away from the very intense gunfight that is going on in front of me. An example is RDR2. I don't know what video game that is. The soundtrack to the okay. The soundtrack to this game is stunning in all caps. Each piece is an example of the perfect Western, except for the gunfights. I like the realistic feeling of actually dying when there's no music. It's just you and the gunfire, making you feel trapped and overwhelmed. With music, which person really likes, it's good, but it's just not the same as with cutting the music. The music is right. The music is great. Person says the same thing about Call of Duty. They want to feel like a real soldier who doesn't have music in the background. And they give an example of some TV and film series. They want to feel the danger that a character ought to be feeling. And they give an example of Daredevil 2x9 and Kingsman Secret Service. And then they finish with the line, no music in a scene raises the intensity and overall makes it, in my opinion, obviously, better. Okay. So I can't speak to the specific examples this person gives, but I will say, can removing music from a particular scene, including a climactic action scene, be effective? Sure. But I would not say that having music generally degrades an action scene. That doesn't really make sense to me because, if you have unless the soundtrack doesn't have music, or there's very little music, in the sound world of the media that you're watching or playing, the music is kind of the fabric, right? If you take it away, that has an effect. And especially if you just kind of cut it off just for an action scene for no discernible artistic reason, right? If I'm immersed in the world of, say, Star Wars, and I'm watching the Episode 4, A New Hope, and we're going along, and we get to the trench run, like the climactic moment, right, where Luke is going down the trench and he has to use the Force and fire his proton torpedoes, and in the tiny little the vent and blow up the Death Star. If I cut the music right there, that's gonna, to me at least, I think most viewers, even if you don't recognize it, it's gonna kind of draw you out. You're gonna be like, wait, why is there no music here? And it just feels empty. If the general landscape is empty, soundscape is empty, okay, sure. If you do it in an artful way, if there's a particular reason why you want to cut music, okay. But in general, music is part of the the soundscape of a lot of media, and if you don't have it just in like some scenario, some climactic action driven scenario, it's going to be kind of odd. We also just generally expect there to be music, even if we're not like cognizant of it. Our brains are kind of aware that there's music in the space, in these action sequences. If you watch, I don't know, I was talking about James Bond with earlier, because the composer of James Bond theme died earlier today. If you watch a James Bond action scene, you probably are not aware of all the places the music is fitting in there. But if you take it away, it would be kind of odd. I also don't think that really... the reason, if you don't have music in a particular scene, whether it's an action scene or not, the reason shouldn't be to create realism in that moment. Like, it'll feel more authentic, because unless there's no music or almost no music in your film or video game, there's no added authenticity. Like, authenticity involved in that world that you've been immersed in involves music. I think if you're going to not have music, there needs to be an artistic reason why, and there can be lots of great artistic reasons why you wouldn't do it, but it's not because you want that moment above all others to feel like intense and intensity. In real life, when you're like in a gunfight, there's no background music. So I disagree with the general take and kind of the reasons why.
Yeah, if the reason's gonna be for realism, cinema is not the right place to to go for that. Generally speaking, at least.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking about like lack of music in a film this week, or I guess last week, end of last week. I was watching the final Tarkovsky film, which I hadn't seen, Mirror, or Zerkala, and there's essentially no music in it. It's an odd film. It's definitely the most difficult of his films. I think I understand Malik's The Knight of Cups much better, because I think he's the Knight of Cups. In the Knight of Cups, Malik is trying to do something like what Tarkovsky is doing in Mirror, but not quite as effectively, I think. And I don't know, it's a complicated film. Like, I probably have to watch it multiple times to even begin to figure out what is all the artistic things going on in it. But there's almost no music. There's maybe 30 seconds of music in the entire film. But that's there's a good reason for that. And it's not to make it more authentic. The music, when it is used, highlights very specific things, and otherwise I think that the sonic landscape, you need to hear like the sounds of what's happening in the world for you to kind of be immersed in this kind of dreamlike world where the guy's past mirrors his present in some way. It can be very effective to not have music, but it's not because Tarkovsky is not doing that to enhance realism, because it is not a film that is about realism one bit.
Yeah. My biggest criticism of Hitchcock's The Birds was that it didn't have music. I think that made that movie way less good than it should have been. That movie, I mean, and Hitchcock basically said, yeah, I just kind of wanted to experiment with a movie without music. And I was like, dude, this is why you shoot a short film or something like that. Shoot maybe some TV featurette or something like that. Like, you don't shoot a whole film and just say, yeah, I'm just not going to use music without any reason. Like, I think you kind of need reasons for things that you do.
Yeah, like Tarkovsky definitely has an artistic reason for using essentially no music in Mirror. And it makes sense. It would be an even stranger film in not a good way. It's a strange film in a good way, but it would be a strange film, or a stranger film in not a good way, if it had a lot of music in it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. This last one is from Nathan. So, Nathan, if you want to explain.
All right. I got my I got this take from. It wasn't. I remember. Yeah, it wasn't like r/unpopular opinion. It's like on r/true unpopular opinion or something like that. Interesting. Oh wow, I do. Sorry, I'm having issues with seeing. Oh my! I'm reaching the limits of my cell service here. trying to view this. Can you read the titles? I remember what the heck I'm actually supposed to read.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Reddit has been playing around with her formatting, so every page is slightly different these days. But the title
I just
said,
pulled it up.
Okay, yeah, Ben, you can go ahead. Then.
Yeah, it says John Powell's Happy Feet score is underrated. I'm going to briefly skim the actual text here. It says, such a great film. Yeah, but the only thing the person can say about it that hasn't already been said is that the music is amazing. Okay. Well, I have to be honest. This is a hard score to find. And when I was trying to listen to, and I do this, I love listening to John Powell's music. You basically can't hear the score because the score, as it's been released on soundtrack, like on a soundtrack album, is pretty much just all of the pop songs that are in the film. I'm not sure that a single bit of John Powell's music is on the Happy Feet soundtrack. So, with that in mind, I actually, just over here, I'm not going to reach up over and grab it, I actually bought Happy Feet.
Oh.
I haven't seen it since probably the year it came out, and the person says 2006, that sounds about right. So, my knowledge of this score is pretty much zero, because you can bet that I did not pay attention to the score for Happy Feet in 2006. And even if I had, I wouldn't have remembered it. So, I'm pretty useless to respond to this. But I will say that knowing what John Powell has written for similar films and of the same time period, it is probably a pretty good score. But again, I need to watch this film before I can truly, give my thoughts on the score itself. So unfortunately, I can't really say anything about this.
Isn't Happy Feet a musical? Or like am I misremembering that entirely?
Well, it's about the penguin who doesn't fit in with the other penguins because he likes to dance.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Happy Feet. Okay.
Yeah. So as you might imagine, for a 2006 animated kids film about a penguin that doesn't fit in with society because he likes to dance, it has a lot of 2006 vintage pop music for the penguin to dance to. Now, obviously, there's some underscore. I remember very little of the film, other than I thought it was very cute. There's a whole thing where he almost gets eaten by the leopard seals, I'm pretty sure. And I think he gets on a boat and goes to America and something like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I think he gets on a boat at some point. But as you can imagine, there's got to be music for that kind of stuff, by Powell. But the majority of it is a penguin dancing to good 2006 vintage stuff that people would want to dance to, I guess. And that's pretty much the soundtrack. It was not that long ago that I, looked up a soundtrack and was very disappointed that there's no actual underscore on it. So, yeah. Hopefully it is good. Hopefully I will end up agreeing with you, whoever posted this.
Yeah. Cool. You want to take us out then on Ben on this segment?
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to Mixed Media Music, our Arguing with Reddit. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing me responding to some random hot takes from the internet. And if you are watching live, definitely stick around and keep watching. We got the next segment. We'll be taping, rolling right into it. Thanks for watching us. Definitely check us out. You can look at the link, mixedmediapodcast.com, which contains all the links to everywhere you can stream and watch our show. You can check out our Discord where we talk about art all the time, and you can also support us on our locals page. So yeah, thanks for listening to Mixed Media Music.
Sweet. All right, ready, Nathan?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Mixed Media Gaming.
Welcome to Mixed Media Gaming. This is our third section of this podcast. Normally, I'd be doing a review or an interview of something, but I'm doing it a bit differently this time. I'll be doing a normal topic segment. We just heard from Ben, him reacting to hot takes on Reddit, and Irving on recession and business things. So yeah, I'll be talking about branding in video games. Right, so I'll just get into it. Okay, so in 2021, there was a study done by Cell. The first S is let me restart. I read the name of this website for the first time. My brain died because it's called Cell, right? But the first cell is SELL, and the second one is CEL. I don't know why my brain did not like that at all.
Oh,
I was
like
trying to explain
selling cells.
Huh? What?
Like sell, like you're selling a cell.
A cell? A cell phone? Like that?
I don't know what it refers to.
It doesn't make sense to me because it's a cell phone. Okay, it makes sense now. You'll understand now why it's called cell. Okay, it makes
Liam
sense.
is confused.
Let me start over. So, according to Cell, a cell phone marketing company.
Wait, so that makes sense. They're selling.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Phones.
It took me a moment to connect. Like, oh yeah, they do. Like the page I'm on is about cell phone branding. I was like, okay. Well, anyways, in 2021, they did a little survey, and it was about essentially identifying the strongest brands within the phone industry. And I found that Apple, with their iPhones, had the highest sort of what we'll call a brand equity, which I'll explain later. They found that 92% of iPhone owners intend to buy a new iPhone, as their next upgrade, right? Whatever that might be. Compare this to Samsung users, who it actually dropped by 11% from 2020 to 2021, which is pretty big percentage, from 85 or 86% to 74%, right? So okay, yeah, why is it that Apple or iPhones, we'll say, are so well loved or so well sought out as the next upgrade? Well, the reason is, actually it breaks down the reason. So in the survey, it asks them, why is it the case that you intend to get an iPhone again as your next upgrade? And when you add up all the reasons and whatnot, you'll find that 70% of the reasons are essentially for the brand, whether it be I'll get into it. So okay, what is brand equity? That is what Apple has, the creators of iPhone. In fact, we might say Apple has the most brand equity of any company currently. Brand equity is often seen as a combination of four different things. There's brand recognition, brand association, which is like sort of how the brand is perceived based on associations you make with the brand, right? Stuff like that. Sorry, okay. I'm telling you, my technical setup is not good right now. It's hard to explain without showing, but okay. And the third thing is perceived quality. So when you get the item, do you think it's a good item? Or actually, you don't have to have even bought it yet to have a perceived quality outlook on an item, right? Like I have a perceived quality about Samsung phones, but I've never actually bought a Samsung phone, right? And the fourth thing is brand loyalty. So let's talk about this in context with some video game studios and publishers. We look at the big names like EA and Activision Blizzard. They'll find that they have very poor association, leading to a relatively low, poor brand equity for their size. A company that massive, it's very, very strange that they have such a low brand equity. They do have high recognition within the gaming community. They have a fairly iffy perceived quality, and they have essentially no brand loyalty. Right? No one goes, "I'm going to buy this game because it's an EA game." But no one says that. No one's ever said that ever. Right? Maybe a long time ago. And I understand that the publisher and not the developer, but the brand is still, as we'll talk about later, the brand still encompasses the entire thing. You can say, maybe Blizzard itself has taken steps to sort of remedy the situation. Being bought out by Activision, becoming Activision Blizzard, is sort of like it's almost like attempted brand revitalization, right? Saying, Blizzard is the old entity. Now we're Activision Blizzard, right? As if that's going to make things different. As far as I'm aware, Blizzard is still fairly autonomous. But there are some other companies that have actually good associations, such as, say, Devolver Digital, the publisher of small games. The issue is they're a publisher of small games, so in comparison, they have fairly low recognition, which leads to an odd space in the game dev industry where there's just nothing that has high brand equity compared to like pretty much every other industry where there are brands that have high perceived quality, high recognition, high brand association, and high loyalty. Example: iPhones or Apple, right? Well, I guess iPhone is a sub brand of Apple, but and even Samsung, even though they've been declining in terms of brand loyalty, they still have high brand equity. And this is just their phone space, right? Samsung does many other things outside of this phone space. But even within phones, even though they're potentially struggling a bit in recent years, they still have quite a bit of brand equity. But no such thing exists in the video game industry, which is where people can sort of take advantage of this, right? If you're a dev that's not like a scumbag, right? Suddenly you become better than a large, at least the big retailers, right? Or the big publishers, let's say. Another company I forgot to mention, Ubisoft, right? Ubisoft has pretty good brand recognition. Their perceived quality is like, it tends to be pretty good in general. Although there's some stinkers in there, of course, that are a bit unfortunate. And this sort of like uneven qualities with the poor loyalty. There are probably some people who would say, I'm buying this game because it's a Ubisoft game, and so they have some expectations about what they're going to get from it, and they have those expectations. But there aren't like that many people, relative to, as I said before, other brands like Samsung and Apple and whatnot. Apple's the gold standard in this department, so it would be kind of a crazy feat to ever reach that sort of thing. But I just mean the top of there's no like large entity in the industry with high brand equity. Okay, so to explain how one might take advantage of this as a smaller development studio or publisher, I'm gonna go off, like, derail a little bit. We're gonna talk about packaging, and first talk about physical packaging. So, packaging is a very important part to the life cycle of a product, especially as far as branding goes. At the basic level, all that packaging does is contains the product, right? You need to, if it's like just take an item, put it in a box, that is packaging, right? But usually when you find packaging, it's not like just like a brown cardboard box, just sitting on the shelf somewhere. Usually, has some sort of promotions and advertising on the box itself, right? So, for example, today I was at Walmart, right? And I saw like two different things of was it Neosporin? It was some medicine thing. I think it was Neosporin, right? And essentially, the packaging looked almost identical, except they had like slightly different, information on, what it did, slightly different versions of Neosporin, whatever, right? This is one of the uses of packaging, right? Informing, advertising, that sort of thing, right? Now, in the digital space, we don't really have that same sort of packaging, right? I know boxes that we put around our games. Well, there were, I guess, in the times of DVDs, but we're past that. So all we have now are our Steam store pages, and that's it, mostly. You can consider that almost a sort of packaging is your games store page, right? Whether it be on an independently hosted website or Steam or Epic Games, Xbox Store, whatever it is, right? That's sort of the first impression. It's where you sell yourself essentially as the game that you want people to buy. But you also have something that I think is more neglected. Now, in the packaging process in the packaging planning, I should say, for physical items, oftentimes, it's not only important, just looking at the package, but also the unpacking process itself is sort of useful, right? It's sort of important, I should say. Now, in cases like something like Neosporin, I mean, it's probably pretty simple. It's just probably like a very standard box you open in any standard way, right? Compare it to an iPhone, for example. Well, it's a very premium like opening process with it looks fancy and whatever. Something that's with premium products, you tend to expect these things. Now, Neosporin is not going to make an iPhone style packaging because it's just not worth the cost, right? Neosporin is fairly cheap, and the extra cost per unit, which would add up so much just for making anything more than a simple box, it's just not worth it, right? The great thing about the digital space is packaging is you don't have to pay per packaging per game. So what is, aside from the store page, right? What is video game packaging or unpacking? Unpacking you might consider as being the sort of the experience you get when you first open a game, or I guess you could say you sort of unpack the product every single time you play the game. But the first time is the most most prominent, I guess we'll say. For your first experience. And I don't remember the number, but it's a majority of people. I think it's a majority of people. Say they take photos of products that they just unpacked, right? And people do this with video games too, right? They'll load up into the main menu, take a picture, like, hey, post on social media. Oh, I just got this game, whatever, right? That sort of thing. So you don't want your game to look like that Neosporin box, right? That's not a very it's not a very nice. It is not very enticing, right? It's just a box.
Neosporin is effective for what it is, right?
Okay, Neosporin is the product is fine, but the box itself, it's nothing crazy about the box.
I mean, yeah, but it's effective. It's not like it's not a disincentive. I don't look at it and say, well, what an unprofessional product or something. I don't know.
No, yeah, exactly.
If that's what it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's fine, right? No one expects Neosporin to have any sort of fancy box, right? And no one really expects games to have any sort of fancy like splash screen or anything, right? But the thing is, you could do that because it's free. I mean, it requires time to actually do it, but it's not like you're not going to pay for that per unit. It's relatively inexpensive to do. Whether that means just nice art or something a bit more fancy, right? I think this is sort of where we get into the Achilles heel of the branding of a lot of these large companies. So if you I would say that companies like EA, for example, have some of the worst packaging imaginable. So now you might be saying, well, how does EA have bad packaging, right? They're a publisher, not a developing studio, right? It's certainly like the loading screens or whatever for different games, they're just gonna be different, right? Because different studios or whatever. Well, because for some reason, despite EA having the worst brand equity of any company that is that massive, for some reason they keep slapping their logo in front of these games, right? When you first open a game, it just says EA really large before you even see the development studio, right? You see it first, you see it when you start it, and that's dumb, in my opinion, at least, because no one opens a game and goes, "Wow, EA made this. I'm floored right now. This is beautiful." All right, no one does that. People go, "Wow, I'm opening an EA game. I'm kind of scared right now." So I'm not. The thing is, right? I'm no big marketer, right? I'm no big brander. I'm relatively new to the space. So you would think, well, EA has fancy marketing team and whatnot, right? But I like to think that I'm pretty dumb, right? So that way always something to learn, right? But I don't know, man. It's like it seems so clear to me. You should not put your logo at the start of the game. It's a really bad idea if you're EA or Activision Blizzard or maybe Blizzard. Blizzard had recent scandals has tanked Blizzard's association. So I don't know, maybe not Blizzard either. But if I were Activision, if I were EA, I don't know if I would do that personally. That's one thing. It seems like EA does not really have, or a lot of these larger companies don't really have a handle on branding, right? Another thing they failed to do in the packaging process, I'll call it, is giving themselves a recognizable store page. So going back to the Neosporin, which is a pretty good example, I guess. I didn't know what Neosporin looked like. Last time I bought Neosporin, I don't remember, so I didn't know what the Neosporin looked like, right? When I was in the store, it's a Walmart, so got a bunch of aisles in the pharmacy section. It's a lot of places to look for just for a small box, right? So I looked it up online, right? And it's just the color. The color was enough, right? I just know. It's just yellow. You just look for a yellow box. I found it pretty soon afterwards. Same for a green box. I was also buying a different thing, and the box is green online. I just look for a green box. I don't have to think about anything, right? Is it green? No. All right, move on. And that reduces the options by quite a bit. So what's interesting is that a lot of these brands don't have much recognition in terms of their quote unquote packaging, right? When we look at their store page and look at two different games, there is no indication that these games were made by the same studio unless it's the same IP, right? So if you like the studio, you're never and you see the another product of the studio, you might not have any idea that they're made by the same person, right? This just seems like a missed opportunity. Now, I understand that you can consider different IPs brands within themselves, right? So you could say that I don't know. I'm going to talk about DICE later. So I'll say, even though DICE, has the Mirror's Edge IP, they also have the Battlefield IP. So it'd be kind of weird if their store pages look the same because they're not really related. Unlike Neosporin, which all Neosporin products are going to be related. They're all sort of the same thing. So you could say these two things should not be associated with, right? And I think there's a point to be made there. I think this is also, it's weird because I feel like, maybe you have a point here, but I feel like in that case, if you're going to disassociate the studio, from the store page, or for example, of the thumbnail art or whatever of the game, you should also disassociate the publisher if they're not well liked. In the case of EA, for example, from the game as well. So there's a company called P&G, right? That is a fairly large company. You've probably heard of it. And they own many brands that you probably had no idea, right? They own, for example, I'm going to list only some of them because there are way too many to list them all right now. They own Bounty paper towels. They own Charmin. They own Crest toothpaste. They own Dawn, Downy, Febreze, Gain, Gillette, Head and Shoulders, Olay, Oral-B, Pampers, etc. Right? A bunch of other stuff. The thing is, if you go to these boxes, it doesn't actually, at least on the ones I've seen, they don't say P&G. I feel like I've seen a P&G logo somewhere, but at least not recently, right? I looked it up just to make sure. I think I looked at Bounty paper towels, and there's no P&G logo on it, right?
It might be a little odd if every toothpaste in the aisle said that they're all made by the same broader company, right? Then you're gonna be like, well, why am I gonna buy one, not the other one?
Exactly.
There might be some monopoly concerns.
Okay, one might say this is a nefarious scheme, but we're gonna ignore the fact. We're gonna ignore this, and we'll call it a genius business move instead. Okay, because that's what it is. In fact, P&G has had some anti-competitive controversy and price fixing allegations, but no one associates that with Crest. No one goes, I'm not gonna buy Febreze because P&G is so bad, because no one even knows that what I say, Febreze is P&G, right? Now, if you're EA, the best thing you could do is make sure nobody knows what games you're publishing. Now, at this point, it's too late. It is way too late. EA has already become a way too big of a thing in the public eye. No matter, EA could have removed their logos from every single game in existence and never put their logo on any other game. It does not matter. EA is too infamous. People will go out of their way to find out what games EA has made, right? And certainly the change would not go unnoticed, right? Once again, nobody associates, no one has any sort of a P&G association Like no one, the average person. I said the average person. I have an association because I just
I'm
happen
gonna
to know.
say, yeah, I have one now.
Yeah, we now have an association, but the average person has no idea, right? So, this is not P&G is just one example. There are many companies that do this, right? In certain cases, like Apple, it is in their best interest to not do that because Apple itself, as a brand, has such good brand equity that they don't need to detach themselves from the iPhone. It was very clear, as you see, like, the iPhone and iPad, their naming is already similar enough that you don't have to know anything else. You just know it's Apple. There's I in front of it, just Apple, right? Make it very clear. But I think this is something you do if you have high brand association to begin with, not something to do if no one likes you, right? Okay. Another thing I think is the second Achilles heel, I guess, of big business branding in terms of at least only in video game industry, is that a lot of these brands are not differentiatable. So what I mean by that is, if you want to go to a fast food restaurant, right, you probably have some sort of I thought it was Frozen, sorry. You probably have some sort of preference, right? If you're given the option between Burger King and, I don't know, Wendy's, for example, I don't know, you probably have some past associations if you've ever eaten there before, right? And so, and things you've heard, elsewhere, and that all builds up into your perception of the brand, right? And so you might choose to buy one place over another place, right? If you want a premium sandwich, you don't go to McDonald's or something like that, right? You go to Subway or something like that, right? But the bad, if you want something quick to eat, you don't go to Subway, you go to McDonald's, stuff like that, right? They have very distinct like rules.
Subway's pretty
right?
quick.
Oh, it's not as quick as McDonald's though. Like I was actually at Subway today. That's actually weird. That's
somewhere I go. Really make the sandwich. I want this kind of cheese. Put it on. I don't know.
Just think about it. If you just want something like toasted, right? Like the toasting time already, like, I don't know. At McDonald's, I haven't been there in a long time, but I feel like you just order it. By the time the thing is toasted at Subway, it's probably almost done at McDonald's.
Okay. Well, I think at least I'm patient enough that I can spare the extra 15 seconds to get my club, I guess.
Okay.
I'd say Subway is relatively a pretty it's a fast food restaurant.
Okay, in terms of branding, it does not matter what is true, it just matters what is perceived. Okay, so people perceive McDonald's as a super quick, even if it's not, does not matter. A super quick. That's how I perceive it. So maybe I'm the only one who perceives it like this, as like the super quick.
I think I concur with Ben on this one because
oh no. Okay, I guess
the first thing I think of when I think of McDonald's and fast is the drive-through line being 20 minutes long, and so
yeah. Not that I go to McDonald's, but yeah, I see McDonald's. I drive past McDonald's all the time.
What is how does McDonald's win over Subway in any way? I realize it's probably the convenience factory of a McDonald's being every square foot.
Yeah. I think Subways, there are more Subways than any other. I think the most locations of any fast food chain in the world.
What? Why?
I have no
because
idea.
I'm being destroyed on my point here.
You can have a tiny Subway and just stick it literally this one room in a building.
I see.
There are Subways everywhere.
I'm sorry for picking up on
takes a lot more space.
I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Subway was the wrong target. I will say
that's true.
I don't know. I've also never seen a crowded Subway. Whereas, even if it's McDonald's, if it's crowded like any other fast food place, it was not that crowded. But it's like you go to a fancy restaurant, it's we have a 2-hour wait. No, but I walk into a Subway, and if there's one other person in front of me, that's kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Okay. So that example. Okay. We'll use McDonald's and Five Guys. Now the thing is, please do not because I've been to a Five Guys one time. I do not remember. Okay, so I'm saying this based off of even less knowledge. But I think this is true. Okay, I think the Five Guys strategy, from what I read, is that they're more based on like the quality of food, right? Not necessarily like a gourmet meal, right? I'm crying, sorry. So it's it's like a gourmet meal, right? But it's more like it's better than like McDonald's or something like that, right? I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And have you been there? Have you been to Five Guys?
Oh yeah, I've been to Five Guys. Well, recently, probably way more than McDonald's. I don't remember the last time I've been to a McDonald's.
Yeah, I went to one time. I think I was one time in college. I don't remember any time before that, honestly. I went to Five Guys. I'm thinking of Jersey Mike's. Yeah, I went to Five Guys once. Okay, anyways, but yeah, Five Guys is known for it's supposed to take a little bit longer, I think, but it doesn't. Just imagine, just imagine it takes a bit longer. But my point, anyways, is being that fast food restaurants are supposed to be differentiable. Maybe they're not. I don't know, but some of them are fast, and other ones some of them have different food selections. So I think I don't remember either Wendy's or Burger King. I haven't been to either of these places in a long time. Either Wendy's or Burger King values a larger sort of more options, right? For meals, and it's something like White Castle, they value nothing. So that is they value low price.
There's got to be a documentary about why White Castle still exists. There's got to be some YouTube like 1 hour documentary.
Is it the low price? I think basically their price still low, right? I think they're priced very.
There's
low.
Nothing worth that.
Okay.
Is White Castle that bad?
I haven't been there ever.
Horrible.
It's the same thing. It's once again a brand association I just have with it as
okay.
The portion sizes are really small. They're not good. And yeah, that's all. It's just small food, like small portions that are just not. They don't taste good. So
yeah, I see.
Yeah.
The association for me is if you want to be thinking about eating fake meat while you're eating, they're all fake meat. You know you're eating some low grade stuff no matter where you go. But at White Castle, it's just rather obvious. That you're eating some gray matter.
Gray matter.
So it looks like.
I think. Yeah. No, I was gonna say. I think for me, like the strongest association I have is, I'm always gonna pick a Qdoba over Chipotle, because which I guess
agree with you.
What is it? It's like Qdoba. Well, at least the guac is free. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like the food seems to be like brighter. I don't know why.
See, that's probably a product of branding, is my guess.
No, but like I don't know. It just seems like it has like a. It doesn't seem like I don't know. Last time I watched Chipotle, it's just like give the vegetables. They just kind of look like sad, like recently unfrozen, and it just looks like there's less care.
I agree with you.
That's I mean, that's probably a product of high perceived quality that it probably translates to high practical quality. So there you go. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say one thing. Last thing about White Castle is that they also have low variety. That's the thing that made me think, because I was talking about high variety, and White Castle has. I was gonna say on the other hand, White Castle has low variety. I just thought like White Castle is just bad overall. So that's why I said that. Anyways, so yeah, you have various. Getting back on track, you have various fast food restaurants that fill certain niches, right? Whether it be I think we talked about whatever it is, right? But in the video game industry, what is the difference between EA and Activision? I have no clue. What are their values? I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't really give you a general EA experience. I couldn't give you a general Activision experience. Not because oftentimes, obviously the dev studios themselves who program the games and have these ideas, whatever. They end up having a big hand in how the game turns out, right? EA just tends to add a nice layer of doo-doo to the end of it. It's pretty much is often what happens. So they're not differentiable in any sort of way, right? But yeah, going with dev studios, the reason I said DICE before, I wanted to mention DICE now, is that the I don't know what you call it, the the signature, I guess the signature thing of dice is having like a big sun, right? All our games have large suns in them. I don't know why, but they're large and they're blinding when you look at them in the game. This is a very minor form of brand differentiation, right? It's like looking at a packaging box and saying, oh, there's a sun on it, and only this brand does big suns on the box, whatever, right? In this case, okay, the packaging analogy is broken. We're not in the packaging anymore. This is in the game, but regardless, still a brand feature, right? In terms of, like, for example, Ubisoft, I actually don't have I don't know, my perception of them is kind of iffy, but what I associate with them, I think they're actually one of the more unique ones. I associate them with their engine. All their games, like, they have similar technology, and the technology is good, which is the nice part, right? In that case, if I see a game made by Ubisoft, I'll probably, I'll have mixed feelings, but like, wow, cool technology. I'll also be like, it's gonna be like the same as every other Ubisoft game I've ever played. But it's not necessarily like a bad thing, It's like I enjoyed the other ones for the most part. So, yeah, I think that's mostly what I wanted to say. I lost my notes. If you missed like the first part of the podcast, sadly, a tragedy happened and my notes are gone. So I'm just looking through some websites. Oh, one thing I want to mention that I just forgot to is that packaging is so important that there are actually packaging awards. So I don't know how to pronounce this. It's called either Die-Line or D-Line. I don't know. DIELINE. So I guess Die-Line Awards, which is literally just packaging awards. And it's the most like businessy award thing I've ever heard of in my life. Most corporate award I've ever heard of. But it's kind of interesting. No big company won this year, so I don't know if it's like a one of the things where it's like we don't talk about the big companies because they're just too OP, or stuff like that. But it's interesting to see what's valued and stuff like that, and the fact that there's actually an award show on that just shows how that this is actually it's not something random. Packaging isn't random, branding isn't random, branding is super important. There are also like brand awards. So Apple won, I forget what it's called. The main brand award, the Apple one. It's not like they ranked them. They ranked the top 100 or something like that, and Apple's number one. There's a lot of surprising ones in there, honestly. But you know what didn't happen? There was no game dev studio or publisher or any related company on that list, which is crazy given how large the video game industry is, right? There were like some random smaller things. I'm like, I've heard of that, but it's like top 100 brands. I'm going to hear of them all. I've heard of that, but like, really? Like, for example, one interesting one is I think it's because it's just like they're not my target. I'm not in the target demographic. Like Hallmark, for example, I'm not in the target demographic. That's just that's probably why it kind of surprised me. Maybe if you're on the target demographic, you get like Hallmark ads all the time, and you know their brand down to the T. Their mission and stuff like that, right? For me, it's like I don't know, but no video game industry stuff there. As far as I can remember, at least, I did look at all 100, so I don't recall seeing one. But that's it. The video game industry has poor branding. You can do better if you know the ways. Boost your brand equity, and remember, practical quality doesn't really sell. It's perceived quality, right? So with perceived quality, okay. Well, first off, I'm not trying to tell you to lie to people. First off, don't do that about your quality. But perceived people aren't always say rational, right? So you may have like one of the greatest games in existence. Doesn't mean people are going to perceive it as one of the greatest games in existence, right? And especially if no one knows what your studio is and what your game is. So in conclusion, it's important to manage your perceptions. You can manage your perceptions through branding. That is what that is. So that's all.
Good topic. Cool. That's our last segment for the night. So thanks for all of y'all who have stopped by. If you're listening in post, which is the most likely way you're listening to this entire podcast, in fact, it looks like we're getting a good amount more viewers on Spotify, which is cool. I hope that means that Spotify is like recommending us now and stuff like that. Who knows? But
are Spotify podcasts live, or are they only in post?
They're only in post, unfortunately.
Okay,
they have like they rolled out like a live feature that only you have to be invited to it, and I don't know what happened to it because they sent me an email. They were like, "Hey, we're doing this thing. By the way, you can't do it." It's like, okay.
Nice. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, we're not the hugest fans of Spotify over here either. So, maybe it doesn't matter. But for all of you who are on Spotify right now, you're well appreciated. So continue to listen to our podcasts. But yeah, for all those who are listening in post, this podcast is a live show, and we would love to get more people on. It really just random sporadically, like we randomly have weeks where like we have like 5 people in the chat, 10 people in the chat, just having a little party. And sometimes there are weeks like this where it's just a couple people. Shout out to Liam and 909 Crime for accompanying us this episode, which was quite fun. So if you want to join the party, the live party, and contribute with your own live hot takes or adding little comments here and there, all you have to do is go to mixedmediapodcast.com, and there are 4 places where you can stream us live and interact with us live. There's Discord, which we have our stage always running the show, and you can also interact with everyone else on the Discord chat. It's pretty cool. And you can be on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Rumble. We have a cross-platform chat. Everyone can see each other's chat, which I'm pretty proud of. It's pretty fun. So it's all one big party, so you can consume from wherever you want to consume. So, I urge you to do that if you're listening to the podcast only. If you like any of the stuff that you heard, this episode or others, please hit the like button or rate us and tell us what we could do better. Especially that. If you're going to rate us less than 5 stars, especially tell us why we're less than 5 stars so that we can do better in the future and hopefully grow a little awesome podcast here. So with that, did I miss anything here?
No,
I don't think so.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this week's Mixed Media Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening and watching.
Bye.
Look, tell a man no trouble, I don't want beef, man, I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want